Good morning. About 6 months ago, we interviewed noted Michigan-educated scientist and medical doctor, Dr. James M. Wilson of the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, about finding a cure for COVID-19. That was early on in the pandemic battle. We checked back with Dr. Wilson and Dr. Bradley Rebecker, the new director of the Wilson Institute of Medicine at Albion College. The dynamic duo has teamed up to protect the public's health. It's Sunday, December the 6th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Doctors, thank you for joining me today on Spotlight. Dr. Wilson, let me begin with you. Last time we talked was back in May. That was early on in the pandemic, about 6 months ago. What has your life and your work been like since then? Bring us up to date.
Well, we've been able to maintain our work in the laboratories, addressing whatever safety or health concerns, masks, social distancing, routine testing. And it's been a challenge to keep the lab going at full capacity, which is at a time when we need to work harder and better and smarter than before. We have progressed our ideas of a countermeasure for COVID, which is to use a gene therapy approach to deliver an antibody against the virus. We announced a collaboration with a company called Regeneron, which is a company that has produced antibodies that can be directly administered to patients for a treatment. These were the antibodies that President Trump used. And we have been working with Regeneron for a while, and we're delighted that we consummated that collaboration. I will say that when we last talked, I never thought we'd be in the position we are now. I thought this would have slowed down, that we would have been able to get control of it.
You didn't think it would get this bad?
I did not. I did not at all. I never expected anything like this. So this is at a time when we need more science, not only our science, but the science of the companies that are developing active vaccines.
We know that Pfizer is asking for approval from the FDA, so is Moderna. You just talked about the company that you're with. Are you working with all of them, some of them? How does this work?
Right, well, let me just briefly take an opportunity to take stock of where we are. There are, I think, 5 lead vaccine programs, 2 of which are based on a technology called messenger RNA, which is Moderna and Pfizer. And then there are a number of others, such as the AstraZeneca one, which is based on a technology called adenovirus. Mm-hmm. We're not working with Moderna or Pfizer in this program. It was our lab that back in the mid 1995, 96, raised the possibility of using an adenovirus as a vaccine. All of those rely on the ability of the vaccine to elicit an immune response that could be protective against COVID-19. You actually have to inject something that activates your immune system. What we're working on now actively is an approach that bypasses that based on work with companies such as Regeneron. They have isolated the actual proteins that can attack or neutralize the COVID-19 virus. We take the genes for those, put them into a delivery vehicle, and engineer cells that are in the airway, in the nose, to express these antibodies. So in our approach, you don't even need an immune system. We kind of circumvent that. And its activity can be quite rapid within a few days, and it should last quite a while. We also are working with another group at Harvard on another vaccine that is in the preclinical phase, but we think has the opportunity ultimately to be better than the active vaccines of the 5 leading groups. So we share information amongst many groups. We've participated and had our finger on the pulse of all of them, although focusing more on this strategy of engineering our cells to express our own antibodies to counteract the COVID-19 virus.
Sure. Dr. Bradley, Rebecca, there in Albion, I want to make sure I get you in this conversation because you're at the sort of the other end. You're at the front end of all of this. You're the new director of the Wilson Institute of Medicine there. But you're also at that front line for students learning about all of this. I imagine this has to be an absolutely fascinating time for them and has to be affecting the curriculum that you're putting together, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And as Dr. Wilson mentioned, this is a time more than ever where we need science. We need leaders in healthcare. And at Albion College and the Wilson Institute, that's what we're working towards. And we're working to help students that have lived through this, right? Our seniors right now, our first year students that graduated under the pandemic, right? They faced numerous challenges. And we've been so proud of our students this year about how resilient they've been in attending classes in person and maintaining good health standards and adherence to our testing protocols to allow us to have in-person classes this semester right up until but before Thanksgiving. And so in the Wilson Institute, we are, as you mentioned, we're working with these students to try to prepare them to be leaders in this new world, right? And to tackle their courses and to understand the importance of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and helping them develop their passions in this area and preparing them for future success in medicine and research.
Okay, we need to take a quick little pause for a cause. We'll come right back with some more questions to both of our doctors right after this. Don't go away. Dr. Rebecca, let me follow up on that a little bit. As bad as COVID has this been a boost for you there at the university and the number of individuals saying, I want to go into medicine or public health or some combination thereof?
Absolutely. Right. These current high school seniors and juniors, they're living through this pandemic. They're experiencing their lives knowing more about public health than ever before, and hearing about the shortages that we have in the hospitals and the need for more doctors and the need for more nurses and leaders in these areas. So yeah, we've absolutely gotten more inquiries and more students interested in our programming. And we've taken steps at Albion to increase our programming for our students interested in medicine and nursing, and developed a new public health program to complement those existing programs that we have to allow students to explore in this area and to really get out there and do good work. Right, this past semester, we've had students working in local testing centers, helping testing on campus and in the community. We've had students working on campus to help monitor and ensure that our safety protocols were being met, which is an important compliance piece in making sure that we can all be together and have in-person classes. So as you said, like as there are challenges, certainly with this pandemic, there's also great opportunity for students to really learn more about science and medicine and healthcare, and really play a part in their communities in helping everyone work through this pandemic.
Sure. Dr. Wilson, back in May, you said to me, quote, we need to be deliberate and careful in trying to find a cure for COVID-19. Certainly there's sort of a race to get the cure, and there are a number of companies involved, as you said, but it sort of reminds me of the auto industry. Just because you're first out the box and maybe first for approval doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the best vaccine or the most user-friendly vaccine for those that have to use this in the healthcare field. Talk a little bit about that and how careful you have to be in trying to find not just a cure, but the right cure.
Unfortunately, we did not have the privilege of time in this situation. That it became very clear to all stakeholders in the spring that this pandemic was likely to be the worst that we've seen. So many different companies with many different technologies jumped in and began to progress their own ideas. Now, what's nice about that is it wasn't top down. We let ingenuity and individual efforts proceed with significant government support. And that's one thing the government did very well, which was put money behind this in the context of the effort called Warp Speed. And they need to get credit for that, I believe. But with that said, the data will speak for themselves, and FDA is carefully reviewing the data. We seem to have an announcement each week about a new study.
Right.
But the trials have been designed carefully. The companies have proceeded quickly, but speed doesn't necessarily mean that we can't be careful. And what we're now seeing are the results, both of which show the best benefit. But so far, there haven't been any showstoppers with respect to safety. I will say that all of them that are now in development and likely to be approved will have the same kind of uncomfortable aspects, such as tenderness over the place of injection. You may have transient fevers or muscle aches, but temporary discomfort, not to the point where it would prevent these from moving forward.
Sure. Have you been able to unravel what I'm hearing, and I'm certainly not of the medical field, so correct me if I'm wrong, some of the mysteries about this COVID-19, the fact that it doesn't seem to pass along in great numbers to mothers who are pregnant to their babies, and certainly pediatric medicine is something in your background you know a lot about. Is that one of the things you're also looking at, these types of things?
We are learning a lot about the virus and its consequences clinically. I think the one aspect of this that I think has created the perfect storm is the fact that the virus is transmitted from a respiratory standpoint. That's not unusual, but that it actively replicates in your nose and in your pharynx without symptoms. So that means that individuals will be spreading the virus without knowing it. That's as opposed to influenza. By the time you're contagious, you're pretty sick. So this period in which you're infected and potentially spreading the virus before you have symptoms does create this potential for spread that we're trying to contain right now through aggressive testing and contact tracing. With respect to transmission, vertical transmission, not all viruses are necessarily transferred from mom to child, although there could be the potential for this. And I'm not as familiar with the current data, but I wouldn't completely rule that out.
Sure. Okay, I need to slip another little break in here. We'll come right back. I want to pick up with Dr. Rebecker talking about all the different layers involved for getting this vaccine to the right places, the right time, and the right numbers. We'll be right back. Stay. And welcome back. Dr. Rebecker, talk a little bit about things I'm sure you're having to deal with in the classroom and even outside the classroom, all the different layers involved in this. We're talking about the cold storage for this particular vaccine, the supply chain, the personal protection equipment, the equipment that will make a lot of all of this. I mean, there's so many layers to this, and then if we're talking about eventually getting it to millions of people, how prepared are we as a nation for all that, and what does it take to be able to ramp up? As Dr. Wilson said, you all didn't have the luxury of time on this.
Yeah, I think from my perspective as more of an educator, I've really enjoyed challenging my students with those questions and helping them think through these more practical implications of vaccine design and use, right? And there's a difference in generating a vaccine versus actually distributing it and making sure everyone has access to it, or who should have access to it first. And these are the important questions that I know that leaders around the country are thinking on, and our students are as well, right? Is who who should have this vaccine first. And we understand that this pandemic has disproportionately affected communities of color, and has a great age distribution as well. And so as these once kind of theoretical questions now become reality, right, this is an important consideration that our leaders have to make and to figure out. And I'm excited to see the first rounds of these vaccines come to market and be distributed here very soon.
This question can go to both of you or either of you. With all of your medical training, both on the medical side and the scientific side, once these vaccines get approval from the FDA and the CDC, should Americans on a wide scale trust this vaccine that has been on the fast track?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to answer that. I have confidence in the FDA as an independent body and the external advisory committees that review all the data independent of the government to make recommendations. And we're going to see the deliberations of those committees. If the external advisory committees endorse the wide distribution of these vaccines and approved by the FDA, I highly recommend that anyone who can get access to these vaccines, especially those that are higher risk, take the vaccine. That this is ultimately what I think is going to be necessary for us to stamp this out.
Sure.
And I have confidence in the system.
Dr. Wilson, you were originally enlisted by one of the undersecretaries of intelligence for the government. That would have been up under the Trump administration. We now have a change in administrations underway. Any concerns from your side as a medical expert about this transition and the effect it should or should not have on trying to confront and solve COVID-19?
I don't really, I'm not as persuaded by the politics as impacting on the agenda and the goals and the objectives. So I don't see that as interfering, especially as it relates to further investment in therapies and preventative measures and the wide distribution of the vaccine. I think where it's going to be most challenging is going to be in the early days when we have very limited supply. But I'm not expecting for there to be a problem, and I'm looking forward to getting on the other side of January to see where we are with respect to the pandemic. And really, all we're doing is we're putting one foot in front of another. This is unprecedented territory.
Sure. Dr. Rebecca, are you getting those types of questions from students who have been watching all this happen in the backdrop of a very political and partisan world?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing we talk about in class is how the virus is nonpartisan, right? The virus is not picking out one side or the other, and it really does call for the need to have that civil discourse and to be able to have conversations that are difficult, that are challenging, with folks from different backgrounds, with different political perspectives, and to make sure that our students can have those conversations and to think through challenging problems that face our country.
All right, we need to take one more break. We'll come right back with a quick final segment right after this. Question for both of you. I'll start with Dr. Wilson. You and your wife, Lisa, were nice enough to donate $5.1 million to Albion College to start the institute there. What do you hope is being accomplished there at Albion College?
Well, Lisa and I thought carefully about where to invest, and we decided on Albion. And the way that Albion has responded to the challenges of the pandemic epitomizes the resilience and the agility of the institution that we were very much looking for to be a thought leader in how to better educate and train healthcare providers. They're now being described as heroes in our society. and the excitement of the young people to get into the space is palpable. And I'm so excited we made this investment when we did, because Albion's going to lead the charge to what a modern day nurse, a modern day physician is going to look like.
Sure. Dr. Rebecca, you've had an administration change there at Albion College. The last president I interviewed back in the spring is now retired, and you have a new one on board. As he takes the helm of leadership there, and you're taking the helm of leadership with the Institute, what are your short-term goals and long-term goals, and what impact do you want this Institute and the School of Medicine to have there?
Well, as Dr. Wilson said, right, we have students here that are passionate about careers in healthcare, and they're really passionate about learning more about it and what difference they can make in the world. And we see our institute and the college as being at the forefront of that educational journey for these students, and to really be thought leaders in the field. Our new president is fully behind this, as well as our donors and our alumni that are fully supporting our program. The one thing that we're really excited about at Albion is our new Albion College Promise. And as we think about the need for more physicians, the more nurses, more healthcare providers that Dr. Wilson described as heroes, right? We need everyone that wants to get involved in this arena to be able to do so. And so the Albion College Promise helps students fulfill that dream. So students that come from families that make under $65,000 per year would attend Albion with 100% tuition scholarship, right? So really taking away that burden that our state is facing on the financial side. And there's also very generous scholarships available for families that make between $65,000 and up to $136,000 per year.
Yes or no? Does the size of Albion College, a smaller school versus the really big ones, make you more nimble and able to shift and adjust to the times quicker than perhaps some of the larger schools?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. And you followed the rules well. Doctors, thank you so much. Good talking to both of you. Thank you so much for the update. We'll stay in touch with you as you confront this very serious pandemic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you now. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.